Normally, when you open up a tabletop war game, it's going to have a number of miniature figures inside. Well, this is Necromolds, which is one of the weirder tabletop war games that I've come across. There are no miniatures in the box. Instead, there's a number of these, which look like weird spell books for different creatures. You can see the, rolling away there, the stats on the back. You can pop open the spell books, and inside there is a mold for that creature. You take some of your spell clay. It's essentially Play-Doh. You can use Play-Doh if you want to. You squeeze your book shut, you pop it open, and there is your new miniature. The flashing comes off pretty easily around the edges, and you can just pop them out and put them onto the battlefield. There we go. I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you can see. It actually has this kind of like old school miniature look where it's kind of chunky, kind of lumpy. It looks like these weird eldritch abominations. And you put them on the table. You can make as many of them as you want. You create your army and you face off against your opponents. And there's a lot of interesting rules in the game that make use of the squishy form factor. Now, I've had my eye on this game for quite some time, actually. I first ran across it somewhere on the internet, but I got to test it out at the last Gen Con, where it quickly became one of my favorite games that I got to test at that convention. And the creator of the game sent me some boxes of it. Now that there is a reprint, the main core set is out again. The expansions are all out, along with a new deluxe expansion that includes some extra materials. And I've been playing it with kids, I've been playing it with adults, and it's a really fascinating new invention in the way that it blends toys and games together. The core box set comes with, I think, 3 of these grimoire molds, but you can easily buy more of them with these little bonus boxes that come with 2 extra ones. So you can collect as many as you want. There's quite a few. Some of them are larger, some are smaller. And what you do is you pick, usually around 3 or so of these to compose your army out of. In theory, you could use lots of them, but there are strategic disadvantages to that sort of thing. A really clever way that the creator makes use of the Play-Doh aspect of the figures is that each of the players gets their own container of spell clay, and it's the same amount, by weight. And you can make as many figures as you want as long as you don't run out of clay. Just make as many as you can. And the way that the figures are balanced is that more powerful characters use up more clay. So there's no necessity for any points system that you have to keep track of. You just stuff as much clay in there, and the really big guys will use up more, and it'll more or less balance itself. The game also comes with this really fun board that you can play on. It's just to delineate the play space, really. The illustration doesn't mean anything. There's not that much space that you need. The characters don't move all of that far, so it's more of a skirmish type game. And when a character dies, each player has their own special signet ring. Like this one has like a little spider in it. And when a character gets killed, the other player can squish them right down into the table like that, leaving a signet ring impression. This is super fun. Kids love it, adults love it, and it actually modifies the terrain because now there is this object on the board that you have to move around. Now, as far as the rules go, it's pretty straightforward. The basic rules are that each player has 4 of these special dice, which they're going to roll at the start of a round, and that gives them symbols that they can assign to the spell books for their creatures. So for example, if I assigned this, which is a ranged attack, to this guy, you can see that that's an option down there, then it would allow them to shoot anywhere within close range because there's 1 arrow next to it. I could also assign a movement die to it over here, and that would allow it to move a medium range. And it's not just one creature either. If you've made a whole bunch of these Grave Ghoul figures, then all of those characters would get to use these actions. So that encourages you to use a relatively smaller number of spellbooks so you can move more characters at once. But if you only used 1 spellbook, for example, made all of your characters Grave Ghouls, then you would only be able to assign 2 of the dice that you rolled because there's only 2 slots there, which would be a problem. So you want to have 2, maybe 3 is a good number. Now, when you actually attack someone, you would use the slashing claws symbol up at the top. Ranged attacks would use the second symbol. And if you're defending, you use the bottom number right there. You would roll the correct number of dice and you're looking for those symbols. So if you were attacking, let's say at close range, I would roll 3 of these dice and I'm looking for these explosion symbols. I got 2 hits. Let's say I was attacking this guy. He has a defense of 3. So he would roll 3 dice and he would get, he got 4 shields. So he got more symbols than me. So what this means is that this guy actually wins the fight, even though he was on the defense. If this was a melee fight, he would win the fight and smash me. Someone always gets smashed in melee combat. If it was a ranged attack and I successfully defended against it, then I'm just not hit. Some of the guys have magic abilities like this one that you could assign a magic die to activate. This would, I think, change the range attack from short range to long range if you wanted to hit someone further away. And some of them have passive abilities like this guy, where it's just +2 defense against ranged combat. One of the nice things about this game is how intentionally modular it is. So you have your basic gameplay rules right here, which just cover a couple of pages, but you can also switch over to basic play if you're playing with small children, which I tried, and it's much simpler. All the characters have the exact same stats. You're just moving your guys around trying to smash other people. You can pick it up real quickly. But if you're an adult and you want something a little bit more tricky, you can go over to advanced play, where there's all sorts of extra rules that are added in to add more tactical complexity. For example, in the normal game, you can get gems by rolling the gem symbol on your attack dice, which you can use to help augment some of your rolls. But in the advanced game, you can also get gem rage, where you can re-roll any dice that have gems on them. You have rules for re-rolling your command dice, for weakening command dice, and adding support skills, because some of these guys have these blue symbols for some of their stats, and then that can come into play as well. It also has rules for solo play, which I have not tried out yet, and it even has a whole page of optional fan rules that other people have come up with that you can add into the game. I love that sense of hacking the game and really making it your own. There's all sorts of crazy things that are in this box that didn't need to be in there, but just add even more flavor. For example, The Rise of the Necromolds. This is a book that's, how long is it? It's like 40 pages long. That's just background and lore for all of the characters and models and for the world of Necromolds, which is wild. But honestly, I feel like the fun part of Necromolds isn't so much the rules, which are perfectly functional. They work just fine. You can dial them up or down depending on your taste. The fun part is making these little guys out of Play-Doh and then smashing them into the table when they die. It never gets old. Kids absolutely love it, and all the adults that I played with loved it too. Now, one of the big things for Necromolds that came out recently was the Call to Arms expansion. And the big thing about that is that it adds these. These are weapons and banners that you can use to modify your figures in different ways. For example, you want this guy to be your champion. You want him to be the conduit of your necromancer's power on the battlefield. Just stick that in there, and boom, now he's your champion. I love how, again, the Play-Doh nature of the figures is always made use of. Do you want to grant him a magical artifact like this wizard hat to help him in battle? Just sort of skewer that onto his head like so. Now he has a wizard hat. Of course he's more powerful. But I think my favorite part are these little red weapons. There's some extra rules in the expansion that allow you to be wounded even when you win a combat and smash your enemies, and that's going to weaken you by giving you some wounded dice to replace your normal dice. So if you're wounded, you just show that by skewing your guy with one of these weapons, and they can be hit multiple times. So you can be wandering around the battlefield with all of these weapons just stuck out of him, coming from every angle, and it looks pretty horrifying. Every time I skewer one of these guys, I want to shout, "Arrowed!" in a strong, bad voice. Ah! The Call to Arms expansion adds a bunch more complexity to the game if you want that. For example, you can actually have one of these character cards representing your particular wizard, along with a special abilities right here, energy that you track up and down, a special ability that goes off if your character, or your champion rather, dies. Your champion can die twice, basically. If one of your champions dies, you take his champion flag out, and the next round you stick it into a new guy. That's your new champion. And then if that one dies, then you lose the game. This makes it a little bit more tactical than the original version, where you're basically just trying to wipe out the other side. Because in this one, you can really try and target their champion, which means that they have to try and protect it, but also they want it to be further out on the battlefield because it has a lot of the special abilities, and a lot of the other characters will get more powerful if they are close to your champion. You can also give your champion a random soul card that adds even more special abilities and special weapons that do something similar. The only issue that I found when playing the game with all of this stuff is that it is kind of a lot. You have a lot of special abilities to keep track of, and every round or every time your characters are doing something, you're thinking, am I missing something? Is there an ability here that I could activate that would help me out? And you have to read through everything that you have. This normally wouldn't be a really big deal, except that the way that some of the powers are written and formatted was a little bit of a pain for me. For some of my friends I was playing with, it wasn't that big of a deal. But there's a lot of symbols that are used to encode information to make things tighter so it doesn't take up as much words. So for example, down here, this simply says, move all, and it has like this sword. So that would mean wounds, so these little swords stuck in a guy, from a squished, that's a squished symbol, champion, or I think that's a friendly at close range from a squished champion into a enemy at medium range from a squished champion. Cannot be an enemy champion, gain 1 energy. So if there was a couple symbols, it wouldn't be a big deal, but there's often a lot of them packed together. I think that, here we go, there's a little key card right here explaining what they all mean. And trying to read all of them takes a little while, especially when you're just starting out. And that's a little bit of a pain because it slows down comprehension. But there's really so much stuff that this game comes with that you can use to modify the game. It comes with these little measurement tokens that you can use to measure far, medium, and short range. There's tons of pre-made terrain that you can put together out of cardboard and throw in there, including things like fully 3D pieces of a graveyard. It's kind of wild how much stuff. The original box set comes with these simpler pieces of terrain right here. You have objective tokens that you can use if you want to move around the board and try and claim those. There's little pieces right here used to track stuff on your champion. You got little magic gems that you can use to track that. There's just an enormous amount of stuff. But you don't have to use it all. You use the pieces that you need and the pieces that you want for the rule set that you cobble together from all of the options in the book. Oh, I forgot, there's also even more special dice, because these are the wound dice, and these are the new special champion dice that your champions get to help you out even more. So in conclusion, what can I say about Necromolds? This thing is just fun. It's fun to mess around with, it's fun to play with, it's fun to squish, it's fun to stab, and I just had an absolute blast. I would probably use a slightly simpler rule set than the one I ended up using, but that is completely down to personal taste. Two of my boys who are 9 and 7 want to come down and just make some Necromolds figures in their spare time. They just want to squish the Play-Doh into the molds and pop out their little guys and arrange their armies, and it's entertaining just in that way. Really, it's almost the kind of game where you could give to a bunch of kids and not even teach them the rules, and they could look at the back of their spell books and just figure out their own rules with all of this crazy toys that the box gives you. If I was getting into Necromolds, I'd probably start out with the box set, which gives you 3 of the molds and all the basic stuff you need to play, and then maybe one of the little expansions that just gives you a few more spell books. And if you really liked it, get the Call to Arms expansion, which has all of this bonus material if you want a bit more complexity and some more toys. Really, it's a great original concept, lovingly crafted, it's fun for all ages. I mean, whether you have kids or not, I say go out and get some Necromolds and get squishing these guys into the table. Oh, killing a enemy monster has never been more satisfying. As usual, I will put links in the description below where you can pick up Necromolds for yourself. And thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.